Okay, so this is part two of the series that I'm going to do, the difference between what I believe in what came to be called TACT, which I assumed that everything I'd been learning was anatomically correct. And then I started finding out, because things weren't working out for my horse, um, that things that were taught traditionally in the veterinary schools, which also are taught in the same and similar matter in natural hoof care, were not true. And so one of those things, see, one of the big differences between what we believe in TAC, pretty much because of kind of the road I went down, um, and these other methods, is a change in the understanding of the anatomy. And while we always emphasize heels, that wild horses have heels, which we're going to see for a fact here in a little while, one of the big major things that I discovered was that what they teach about the soul is not correct. And so even before I learned about the heels, I started having an understanding of the soul, of the anatomy of the soul, that was totally contrary to what is taught in the vet schools, in farriery, and even in barefoot trimming natural hoof care. So I'm going to show you uh, an illustration of that here. Just a second. Let's see. Wait a minute. And I've got a whole series on it on YouTube. Um, Now, here's the thing. All these things that I have learned about the anatomy were nothing I ever set out to find. I never set out to go, well, you know, the vet schools are wrong and this is wrong and now I'm going to prove it. No, quite the contrary. I had no clue that what they were teaching was incorrect. And so this was stuff I stumbled upon because I have eyes to see. Eventually, I mean, once you look at some of this stuff long enough, you start figuring it out. So hold on here a second while I find this. I got so many files and so many pictures. Let's see, that's F. And everything is, well, we'll try this. Oh, wait a minute. I know where I'm supposed to go. Okay, so I have this file that I call bad anatomy. All right. And so I'm going to show you this first. I did this illustration of how I eventually became to see that what they teach about the soul is not correct. Now, so here's one big major difference between TACT and all of them, okay, is that they do not have a correct understanding of the soul. And I can prove this, and the feet of the horse prove this. All right. So I did this illustration. Because I look in books, right? Like, okay, this is Adam and Stashik's Lameness in Horses, which was like the farrier Bible for the longest time. And so I want to learn the anatomy, right? And I'm hearing them all say, even in the barefoot crowd, oh, you got the concave foot, right? And so uh then I start noticing, because I'm doing dissections, excuse me for taking pictures and having eyeballs, all right? I start noticing that what I'm seeing in these books, for one thing, this isn't that old a book. Why when describing the anatomy, why are they drawing a picture rather than using a photo? And it's not only here, but let's look at the Merrick Vet Manual too. See, we got the Merrick Vet Manual here showing the same basic thing, the parts of the foot. Okay. So I'm seeing this because I want to understand my horse's foot because I'm in a dilemma. I've been raised around wild horses. I know their sound. I know that these ideas these men are coming out with that trim based on wild horse feet, and if you can get their feet to be like that, that you're going to have a sound horse. But I'm having issues. Okay. And so I'm really studying, trying to figure it out, trying to learn the anatomy. And as I do, I find that they're incorrect on the sole. And so I'm going to show you that here first. So in their pictures, I want you to look at this, the lamina. They have the lamina of the hoof wall, which the hoof wall is attached to, going clear down to the very, very tip of the foot. Um, and so then they have, and then if you look at the hoof capsule here, you're seeing the inner view. You're just seeing, if you were to look underneath, you'd know that was only concave, right? Just a second. Okay, so it's that way. Now we look over here. We're going to look again. We got a vet manual. I want you to see the lamina that the wall grows down, goes all the way to the very, 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 very tip. And so that means that the sole corium that grows the sole is underneath the very tip under here. And as we look at the bottom of the foot, we can see it's concave, right? So the lamina of the hoof wall goes to the very, very end, and then the sole corium starts underneath. And so all you would grow from that is a concave sole. Let's look at this one again. Here we go. The lamina that the wall starts here at the coronary band, the wall grows down, goes all the way down. And once it gets to here, then only underneath the foot is the sole corium. And so that is going to grow a concave sole. That's it, concave only. Well, so I start noticing that the lamina does not go all the way down to the end of the foot, and that the sole corium, it lips around the edge of the foot, like here, like you see in the picture. See, it doesn't go all the way down to the end. It stops right about there, and then the sole corium lips around the edge like that. And so what I'm seeing is this thing grows a convex ridge of sole around the whole perimeter of the foot, and it only gets concave, right, once you get past that, going into the frog. So here we go. Well, look, okay, this is a domestic horse that I dissected, and this is another uh, dissection of wild horse foot done by Pete Ramey that you can find on his page. And what he's done is he's just removed part of the side of the hoof wall, and then he's using his fingers to pull the sole down right there, and you can see it separating from the sole papillae and things like that. And now I want you to look at the lamina, how the lamina that the hoof wall attaches to goes down to here, and the sole starts growing around the outer edge of the foot. And it produces a convex ridge of sole. And you can even see it right here in the end of the foot itself. Just a minute here. Um, right here, here's the sole. See that? That sole lips up around the foot like that. So it grows a convex ridge of sole. Nobody knows this. This is something they should do. Now, we know that they've done lots of dissections, right? Why can't they see this? Because way back when somebody came up with the idea that didn't know all this, that the sole was only concave. See, the sole would be like this, only concave, not have this ridge. And so the truth is that when they look at it, they can't see it because of what they've been taught. See, if you're taught something is a certain way from the beginning by people you trust, then that's the way you'll see it, even if it's not true. And it can be a snake ready to bite you, okay? But you won't see it most of the time until there's a problem. And then you start to investigate more. And then your eyes might accidentally get opened, and you will see that what you thought you were seeing is not what's really there. And so we have two examples now of how Pete Ramey had 2 feet off wild horses, but he does not see what is in front of him. And the reason for that is because of that one dead wild horse foot that was put in his mind. Now, okay, just a minute here. So that's just one part of the anatomy. The second was the heel buttress, how it's supposed to be. Okay, so even before I realized that uh, we were trimming the heel buttress out of the horse, okay, I had glommed onto this deal here and was working at developing that sole ridge. Okay, now see what happens is, just a minute here. Um, what happens is because they are taught that the foot is only concave, the farrier carves all the sole out. Well, they're taught several things. They're taught that the wall alone bears the weight, and therefore, if the horse does have any sole there, they're taught to carve it out and make it look concave, and uh, so that the wall bears no weight at all. Um, okay, so that's one place where what we do, our understanding is totally different than everybody else. Okay, just on that one thing. All right, now does that mean that would that be an automatic thing that we trim right and we do this? No. Okay, because I knew this, but I kept trimming the heels down or back or way low for years after I knew this. See? So just a minute. Okie doke. So that's just like one thing. Now, to kind of drive that home, uh, let's look at a couple more pictures here. Um, Older pictures where they show the same exact thing. Okay, and how this is historical bad teaching, historical error. Okay, like this foot here, like I haven't looked at these pictures for a long time, but I totally understand. Uh, Here's the thing why I said dissections in and of themselves, you could do millions of them and still never learn the truth. Okay, because if let's say every horse you did had a foot like this foot is deformed. This foot has been deformed from trimming the heels down and forcing frog pressure. Okay, you see the coronary band? It bends down around and under the foot, and the heels have been crushed up into the foot. And so this picture here, this horse would have had false heels. People would have thought he had some heel here, but that just would have been the sidewall. Just a minute here. Wait a minute. Let me go back to that. Oh, it's trying to find the annotate to show you here. Okay, so the coronary band is bent way down under the foot like that. And the cartilages are also bent way down and probably curled in like so. And the heel is crushed up into the foot like so. And really, these were probably all crushed forward, but he didn't picture it like this because it's a drawing, right? He's drawing a foot that's been dissected. Not sure when. We have to know that this is probably 100 years old. All right. And so he's got false heels here. Now, if the foot was correct and this coronary band came unbound, it would come back like this, probably about like so. And the foot would be more like that. That would have been the true foot of the horse. Remember, I told you in the last session, the back 1/3 at least of this foot is soft cartilage and fat. And so it can be manipulated, moved, and crammed and twisted and all that kind of stuff. So this whole back of the foot can be rearranged, so to speak. Okay, so let's see. Okay, see what else here. Farrier knowledge. Okay, so here they're going to have just first of all, feet aren't round. That's one thing we've already found out. Let's keep going though. Okay, here's a more modern book. Again, what are they showing over here? Now you see the hoof wall, but the sole itself is only concave, only concave. The lamina goes all the way to the end. Same thing on this picture. Well, that's pretty much the same that was in Shishak's there. Let's find some stuff here. Okay, here's a foot. We see with the heels totally trimmed out where the coronary band is pulled down to the ground. See that? How the coronary band goes down to the ground? This was a dissection I did. This horse had a lot of heel and a lot of heel depth and had never been trimmed but maybe 3 times in his life. Let's see what I got here. Here we go. This is a book. This is a pretty cool book, actually. I don't know who did it, but somebody was showing pictures of it, and I think it was from France. But look how they had these pull-out things that you'd flip open to see the feet. But then again, okay, look at the lamina, how it goes all the way to the bottom, and look at the foot. It's the sole is only on the bottom and only concave. And of course, the frog has been pulled under the foot. We know that by now. Anyway, back to that. But that's just one example of the difference between what we follow and these other methods is we have come to different conclusions about what the anatomy is. And like I said, I don't care. Don't be deceived by people like, okay, I got this thing up here and I got all these horses' hooves and stuff like that. You know what? I could still be deceived and not know a true thing. Dissections don't prove nothing. People having feet, people having clinics, carving them, taking feet apart. They've been trimming horses wrong for centuries and doing all of that stuff. Okay, so none of that means anything if your foundational understanding of what is actually in that foot is still incorrect, because you will not see the truth. You will see a deformed foot that you've taken a hoof capsule off of or whatever, and you will think that is the way that foot should be, not realizing, see, that's another difference in TACT, is that we realize that the back third to almost a half of that foot is soft cartilage and fat and can be compressed and manipulated and deformed and into a smaller capsule and made all kinds of different ways by how that horse is trimmed. And nobody else is looking at the back of that foot, people. All they see is that coffin bone in an x-ray. Okay. All right. So, uh, now, I want to talk to you about, well, we're going to look at two things first. I'm going to show you two pictures. Okay. Because again, I was asked, what is the difference between, specifically between TACT and the Phoenix Way? Okay. So I'm going to show you that originally nothing. Originally nothing. We both believed the same things. Okay, I'm going to show you what that was. Okay, so hold on here. I need to bring up a photo. Share. Okay, this is an older post on Paddock Paradise Track System, Natural Enrichment for Horses. I think this is Jamie Jackson's page, or anyway, it all stems from him. Okay, because he is the founder of all of this natural hoof care stuff. And we're going to see that exactly how that is. Okay, so he says here, we got here, join Hoofing Marvelous on Saturday, the 23rd of May, 2:15 at Horse World Bristol, as they present natural hoof care and paddock paradise track systems. Learn about the 3 keys to a healthy horse, natural hoof care, diet management, how a paddock paradise can help your horse. Hey, I have nothing wrong with paddock paradise, okay? And getting horses to move and making their lives more natural and things like that. But what I want to point out here is what he says over here. He says AANHCP, CPS, Caroline Anderson, and Lindsay Setchell are hosting this clinic on both natural hoof care paddock and paddock paradise on Saturday, May 23rd. A great opportunity to learn and meet like-minded people interested in humane natural horse care. Okay, so the first thing I want you to see about what became the Phoenix Way, which was developed and marketed by Lindsay Setchell. Okay, Setchell, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the name right. Okay, is that she is a Jamie Jackson trimmer. Okay, now I don't remember. I know, I can't remember what AA stands for. Association of Natural Hoof Care Practitioners. Okay, now you don't just get in that group. Okay, you have to be using Jamie Jackson's methods. You have to believe in what is taught, all that kind of stuff. So this is the foundation. Now, I'm not saying that she exactly follows everything to a T of what she started out as, because I know that now she believes in leaving more toe. Okay, and that's awesome to a point. But what I'm saying is this is her foundation. And so in order to understand her and that method, we have to understand where she came from, and what her educational background is in the natural hoof care world. So, okay, so that's just her. But since we have her, now I've already been mentioning Pete Ramey. Okay, that's where he started too. But we're going to see that. We're going to see that this is where everybody comes from, ultimately, in the natural hoof care world. Um, either from Jamie Jackson or Hildred Strasser, and those two were joined together at the hip. Okay, to make the whole natural hoof care thing. It sounds good. Just because somebody says something is natural or from nature does not make it good, correct, or true, people. And you're going to see that in detail. Okay, so that's one picture I wanted to show you. So, and where I started getting an inkling for this was when I can't remember what, I was on some group. Usually I don't follow any groups because I get too depressed. But I was on some group and had is when I first learned about the Phoenix Way. Now, I shared before, I think in part one, that I had never heard of her or the Phoenix Way or Hoofing Marvelous or anything like that until somebody shared a link to something on one of those pages, and I went to click in, and it said, this page is not available to you, which usually when that happens, because they block you, right? So I had no idea who it even was. So then I have my ways, you know. So then I got into that page and I found that it was this group. And I'm like, why is this person blocking me? You know, um, uh, I don't know. Why don't you tell me why? Why would that person just block me out of the blue? See, somebody I've never talked to. It's because they know who I am. Okay. They know my channel because whatever type of marketing or algorithm stuff they've done in the YouTube world there, they've managed to get their videos right next to mine all the time. So, that was done on purpose. All right. So, because one thing you have to realize about all these things is this is now big business. Okay. Um, this is a business. So before you get your panties in a bunch, all right, you need to realize that this isn't about, oh, dissing your BFF barefoot trimmer. All right. This is about, these people have a business, they have an ideology, they have a belief, and they are presenting themselves as practitioners. See, Jamie Jackson, instead of just calling people trimmers or whatever, uh, he calls them practitioner. Well, how does that come across to you? That is a word that is used for medical professionals. Okay, so this is all marketing to make you think by using these words that this trim is better than brand X. The old farrier deal, no, we're practitioners or we're podiatrists. But I'm going to tell you right now, you could name yourself next to anything because there are no laws restricting you or anybody and their dog from opening up a hoof care school. You don't have to have any qualifications at all. All you got to do is print up your own qualification, you know? So people need to realize that. All right, so okay. So we're going to look at what does this person believe and how would it affect how they would look at horses' feet and how they would trim. That's all. Um, and you're gonna see, and then you can make a uh, uh, informed decision once you understand their background as to whether that is what you want to do with your horse. That's all. Okay, so here's another picture. I'm going to show you just a minute here. And so I want to remind people that I was asked to do this. Okay. I'm just not out here people get so upset. I'm just not out here trying to diss people. There's a difference. There's a difference between, uh, now there didn't used to be. I used to believe the same things all these people believe. Okay. But I don't anymore. So, and there's reasons for that because I discovered things in the anatomy that were totally contrary to what these people were taught that they still think are true. Okay. So, let's look at this picture now. Because we're kind of going to take a couple of people at the same time. We're going to take Pete Ramey, David Landville, and Hoof and Marvelous. Okay, so just a second here. Share. All right, so I'm looking for some reason I can't find it, but I'm sure I'll find it later. I'm looking for uh, a post that David Landerville did. Now, this is from 2016. Now, I have not intentionally followed him, but when I first got on Facebook, I started seeing these posts go through my timeline called On the Vertical. And I thought it was some lady trimmer and stuff. It wasn't for quite a while that I realized it was this man, David Landerville. And so for a number of years there, I kind of followed what he was doing, and I was doing the same thing. I was trying to get this foot on my horse. Okay. Just to uh let's see here. Just to remind you, okay, I'm going to show this picture again. Just a second here. Okay, so 2014 was the last time that I did barefoot trimming. Okay, because while my horse got sounder and better for the first couple years from being big and platter footed from the farrier, who would never take down enough hoof wall, and so his foot started to spread out. Then gradually, as I kept trying to get that foot, he got more and more unsound, more and more tender footed, sore after a trim, things like that. Okay, so this was when I quit. Didn't trim him for much for a year or look at his feet or take pictures. Came back to this, and I'm telling you that every single one of these feet, you let them grow, this is what they grow into because this is what they really, really are. And that's why they have to trim them so often so that stuff don't start showing up. Okay, so let's go back to him. Okay, so this is from 2016, and he says left Jamie Jackson's Mustang cadaver hoof. See her right there? Right, that's right here. Right is a 16-year-old thoroughbred hoof 2.5 years after pulling shoes and keeping a 2 to 3 week rehab trim schedule. Okay, but I can tell you this horse was not sound. This horse is walking just like my horse. Okay, I got a picture of this horse, and he's got these little teeny tiny feet on a big old thoroughbred. Okay, and you can get away with this to a certain degree in Arizona where he lives, but a lot of times if you live in a more humid climate, it's not going to work for you because the periopal binds that foot in that capsule and keeps it from coming out of that capsule. And so then if you get a lot of moisture, the foot can literally burst out of the capsule and the capsule can even come off. And the periopal is there to bind the capsule to keep the capsule from coming off. Is it, when the heels are being worn out due to the environment or the circumstances. Okay, so it's no wonder though, that we could trim in such a way as to produce this foot and that horses could even seem sound. But in the long run, because this is not their true anatomy, this is not their foot, this is not how their foot functions, you're going to have uh, other damage taking place in the legs, on up into the knees, and stuff like that. Um, so, the point I want to make here is that just like Lindsay Satchel and the Phoenix Way, okay, you're going to take David Landerville, he goes back to Jamie Jackson. And he, like I said, I showed you a picture that I put in my book. Just a minute here. And I didn't even realize it was on there. I did not realize that I had that image so stuck in my head. See, just a minute here. Okay, right here. That's the same foot. And see, I printed this off the internet from Tribe Equus right there. See there? Perfection. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not perfection. Okay. But that's what everybody's been taught that it is. Um, okay. So David Landerville, which I can't find. I can't figure out why I can't find it. But anyway, he did a post. I will find it though and post it called The Heart of Hoof Development. All right. And in it, he says that Pete Ramey says to take that foot, that wild horse foot of Jamie Jackson, and burn it in your brain. And he said he took that literally and he did it. All right. And so, just like that image was in my brain for 9 years, 9, 10 years, trying to get that foot on my horse. Even though I saw other pictures of other horses' feet, like this one here, just a minute here. Where is my share? This one here, Pete Ramey's as well. Okay. See, this is nothing like that foot. See, this horse has at least 2 inches of heel. This hairline does not go down to the ground down here. But once that other image is put in your head, that's what you see. Even if this is in front of your face, you do not see it. Okay, so that image was put in David Landerville's brain. And so that guy, he is super talented, very artistic. Okay. Um, and so he worked for a long time to try and get that foot on a horse. Now, I wish I had that article because in it you see that he knows that these horses are going to go through a lot of pain to get this foot. Okay. Um, uh, and I can testify to that. All right. And some of them will never ever be sound. So, but if you love your horse enough, you're willing to let him go through the pain of putting this foot on him. Uh, let's see here. Let me show you a couple of things here. Just a second. Oh, stop share. Well, let's see here. And well, here's something interesting. Just a minute here. Let's see, share. Okay, so this is on Pete Ramey's website. Okay. And he sees, but he doesn't see. See, because he even shows that if you were to trim, that it would be wrong to trim these heels out, right? Okay. But he doesn't realize that if you were to flip this over, you're going to have that very same foot that he told David Landerville he should burn into his brain. Like once we trim that heel out, if we lower it, we got that foot. We got that 30-degree hairline that comes down like that. Um, just a minute here. So I'll show you something here. Okay, so there's a gal in our group, and her name is Jan Mulcher. If I can find the picture here. Just a minute. See, he's very artistic. Very artistic. This is his trim. Okay, he put all these lines on here. Right here. This is Pete Ramey after Pete Ramey got into David Landerville. And right here, what you see the progression of what he thinks the hoof is supposed to do. And he thinks this is building hoof wall. And what it is you continually ramp and take the heels down, and gradually, one line at a time, it pulls all this cartilage down to the ground and rounds it out like that. That's what you're seeing here. Okay. Now we do the exact opposite. Okay. He thinks this is a heel buttress. He doesn't realize he's already trimmed the heel buttress out. And it's pulled all this down and under the foot. It's taken the frog and pushed it under the foot. And so what we do is the exact opposite. We start growing, allowing the heel to grow, and as it grows, it starts filling in, and the capsule wall remains at the top, and it releases the cartilages and it lifts everything back up. So what he says to do here by trimming the heels like this, see how that heel is ramped? You see how that would rock her and force the horse back on the back of his bulbs here, and it would start to pull this all down and around and under, just like what you see here. Okay, and what is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is to try and force the foot to look like Jamie Jackson's one dead wild horse foot. Let me see here. Okay, so he became obsessed with this foot. This is a picture that he took right here. He's out, enjoying nature. And what does he find? He finds a rock that looks this is his picture right here. So he forms this foot in the sand at the beach. In all his clinics, he takes the dirt in the arena and forms the foot. He carves the foot out of mesquite. Okay. See, Pete Ramey said, burn the image of that foot in your brain. He did it. And then he worked just like I did to get this is one of his horses that he's trimmed the feet out of that has no suspension at all. That's why he's so stiff legged. But look, the feet look beautiful. You see that? But that is not the true foot of the horse. Those are false heels. The cartilage is pulled down. The frog is pulled under the foot. Let me see here. Okay, there we go. See what I mean? Forms it in the sand at the beach. So all of these feet are made to look like that one dead wild horse of Jamie Jackson's. Just a minute here. Let me see. Here, okay, here we go. Carves it out of wood. Nope. all all these feet are made to look like, oh, there's my cousin. Okay, well, anyway, so enough on him for now. We will come back to him when I find that article that he wrote, The Heart of Hoof Development, because it's a rather he really shared about what he believes and why. And so we'll come back to that at a later time. But right now, let's see what time it is. 1:58. Um okay. Well, I explained something else that's going on here. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to show you two books here. Right up there. One is New Hope for Soundness. The other one is The Natural Horse: Lessons from the Wild for Domestic Horse Care, 1992 edition by Jamie Jackson. This here is by Gene Ovenick. Okay, he developed while Jamie Jackson developed barefoot trimming basically and natural hoof care. Uh, Gene Ovenick, well, first let me tell you what they did. Jamie Jackson claims to have researched wild horse feed in the Great Basin, which is out west around Nevada, California, Oregon, um, from 1982 to 1986. He claims that he basically lived out there with the wild horses, and that then it became evident that he needed to get closer to their feet. So he arranged with the Bureau of Land Management. Uh, that's these guys here. That's these guys here. Okay. He arranged with the Bureau of Land Management to be able to go to their Litchfield, California facility. It's called the Litchfield Corrals. And uh, get right in there in the corrals when the wranglers were roping the horses and laying them down in order to uh, brand them, gild them, vaccinate them, age them, etc. And so he arranged to do that. And he says in this book that he did that in 1985 and that he was able to measure, examine, and photograph 107 wild horses freshly taken off the range, which he calls the outback. Okay. And that his research on how to trim and what a horse's true foot is based on the wild horse feet that he studied. And as he says, measured, photographed, or measured, examined, and photographed. Photographed. Remember that, okay? Now, at around the same time, this guy, Gene Ovenick, was up in Wyoming and Montana. These two men had no idea about each other. Let me see if I can turn this off. It's kind of shiny. Okay, these two men had no idea about each other. So, uh, Gene Ovenick here in 1986 and 1987, he arranged with BLM up in Wyoming and Montana to be able to do the very same thing, to measure, examine, and photograph um, however many horses. I don't know how many horses, but it was quite a few. Okay, he never gives an exact number. But here's the difference between these two men. This man has a multiple amount of photographs that he took that you can see. This man, though he claimed to have measured, examined, and photographed 107 wild horse feet in 1985 with BLM at the Litchfield Corral, he doesn't have one single photograph in the book. Um, Now, the interesting thing about it as well in this book here is that he also made it sound like he lived with the wild horses. Yet, most of the photographs of any wild horses in here are not ones he took. Um, so, okay, so that's suspicious enough, you know. Um, in fact, what about our sample here? Just a minute. We're going to find it here. This might be the one I tore it out of. I'll have to get the other book. Yeah, I think it is. I tore it out so that I could, okay, where are you? There's actually 3 editions to this book. Hold on here. Oh, where's my other book? Just a second. Nope, there it is. Okay, so I got 2 copies. I got 2 copies of this 1997 edition right here. This is where this foot comes from. But it didn't come from the Litchfield Corrals. See, our model foot here. It didn't come from the Litchfield Corrals. It came from Susanville, California, where BLM's largest adoption facility is. And so it is of a wild mare that died in a roundup. Let me find the picture here. Just a second. So it's of a wild mare that died in a roundup. So what happened was he went to not to Susanville. He went to the Palomino Valley facility. I think I might have said something different before that. And that is the largest adoption facility that BLM has. Uh, and that's in California. I think it's in California. Hold on. Okay. Right here, he says, okay, this chapter is devoted to the description of the natural hoof intended to guide farriers interested in natural hoof shape. My observations are based on 107 wild horses I examined at the Litchfield Corrals in Northern California. Okay, so earlier in the book, he says he was able to measure, examine, and photograph these hooves. But you know what? All we have is the picture of this one dead horse and its hooves right here. These are the feet that became the model for the whole barefoot industry. Let's see here. Okay, and so he drew a picture. He drew a picture there. Beware of people drawing pictures, people. Now, remember how I showed you how in the Merrick Veterinary Manual and in Adam and Stashik's Lameness, which is like the Farrier Bible, how when they describe the anatomy and teach the anatomy, they draw you a picture, but their picture is not true to fact. Okay, because I also showed you, let's see here, let's take a quick look. Don't look at my ugly hand. Let's see. Just a minute here. Share right here. Okay. This is not true to life. This is true to life up here. This is true to life over here. A picture, don't use pictures, people. I mean, a little bit, yeah. But beware when people want to just do nothing but draw pictures. I'm going to tell you that right now. Um, because the picture does not represent the truth per se. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, uh so he draws pictures of this one dead wild horse's foot. Now he's got some other dead feet, okay, but these feet did not become the model. And I don't even notice if on this one dead foot it actually had some heel. Because what he says in here was that all the heel height was relatively the same. Okay. But okay, here he's showing heel height right there. Okay. So this would be your bulb. This is bulb height. Your bulbs are clear down here on the ground. Just a minute here. So here we go. So this picture here. Now, when I first started realizing what the Phoenix Way was all about was when this picture was shared by one of her uh, students on another site. Okay, because she was a member of his organization and she learned to trim natural hoof care style. So her and David Landerville, they may be doing what seems to be very different, but at the same time, they still have a lot of this teaching as their foundation in their heads. And it's not easy. It's not easy to get rid of that stuff out of your head. So anyway, okay. Well, here's the thing. Uh, so in this book, which started the whole natural hoof care movement, he says that he did 107 horses, but we have not one photo of any of those horses. Okay. In, let's see here. In this book, he did another edition in 1997, and it's the same. He says 107 horses that he was able to measure, examine, and photograph. So 1997, so from 1992 to 1997, 5 years, he kind of started going, getting this natural hoof care moving. At the same time, he met a lady by the name of Dr. Hildred Strasser. Now, in this book, there's all kinds of advertisements for his stuff, because he's getting a business going. In this book, you see that he is promoting and being promoted by Dr. Hildred Strasser of Germany, who wrote the book A Lifetime of Soundness. Now, the thing that both of these people believe in is ground parallel coffin bone and low, 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 low heels. Okay. Now, Jamie Jackson is promoting low heels, it would seem. But the fact of the matter is that he's got 2 interviews on YouTube now where he states that he actually believes wild horses have no heels, no heels at all. Okay, so here we see, this is why I want you to know that he and Hildred Strasser were on the same page. Okay, because you need to know what she believes as well, because a lot of natural hoof care is also based on her ideas. Okay, so then in 2020, he comes up with another edition of the same book. Only in this book, he changes up the number of how many horses he said he did and the years. In this book, he says that he didn't just arrange with BLM for 1 year, but that he was there for 2 years and that he was able to measure, examine, and photograph the feet off of 250 wild horses. And in this book, guess what? Not one photo, not one. Instead, what do we have? We have the same feet off the same dead wild horse that was in the first book. Just and lots of advertisements for stuff too, just so you know. Just a second, I'll find that picture. Oh, well, yeah. See, that's the same foot. See, bulbs on the ground, no heel. So, in TACT, we believe horses should have heels because we have looked at wild horse feet and we have looked at internal feet, and they have heels. Just a minute, I got to find this. So he changed this up a bit, and but still no pictures. Just a second. Okay. So here are the feet off of the one dead wild mare that wore her heels out. Now, what's interesting and weird is that this is the front foot off of that mare. And if you look at her, she had very run forward heels. But this is not the foot that became the model for what your horse should have. The foot that became the model was this left rear foot. And so, what all of these people have wound up doing, including myself, was having this image put in their head and trying to trim their horse's feet to this image. The foot off of one dead wild horse that died in a roundup, and the rear foot, and had totally worn its heels down. Now, why is that? Because this fit his theory. And his theory was that they had no heels and a steep dorsal wall. And this is what he mentions the story twice in a live interview on YouTube, that when he was at the corrals, at the Litchfield corrals, that he was able to get in there, measure and examine and maybe photograph one horse, and that he realized, well, this is the story he tells, he realized that he didn't have the proper equipment to measure those horses' feet. Now, um, I something you need to understand is that when you're around a horse being roped, it's a very, very dramatic and unpleasant experience to see a horse roped like a steer and spread out. Okay. And he mentions more than once that he put his life in danger for all of us. And so, uh, uh, so, okay, so this is a story he tells. He was at the Litchfield Corral. He got in, he tried to measure this horse's foot, and he realized he just didn't have the equipment he needed. Okay, I got to show you something here. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you this. He realizes he didn't have the equipment he needed. He told the wranglers, he said, a regular farrier's regular farrier's gauge, angle gauge, is not going to work on a wild horse foot. He said, I'm going to have to figure something else out. So he said that he left after just one horse, that he left and that he went to town and he got some signs and he invented, those signs that like for rent and no trespassing that you get at the hardware store. Okay, he says he went to town and he invented this hoof meter reader here. See? So instead of doing this, he said a wild horse's foot would not fit on that right there. That he couldn't get the angle of the dorsal wall with one of these. So that instead he had to go to town and invent this thing. And then while the horse is tied up, struggling, that then he would take a clipboard, all right, and put it on there and then hold his little doodad up. Wait a minute. Let me do this. Hold his little doodad. Hey, people, this is where barefoot trimming comes from. Hold his little doodad up there to get the angle. That's what he would do while the horses were tied up. That was easier than this. Okay. So he says that he told the wranglers that he had to leave and go invent something. But here's the other thing. He says that as soon as he got out of the corrals, he called Leslie Emery. Now, Leslie Emery is the guy that wrote this book here, okay, along with Jim Millers and Niles Van Hoosen. Okay, Leslie Emery advocated having good heel length for a horse to overcome navicular. And Jamie Jackson had moved from Arkansas to California to shoe with Leslie Emery. And so they were friends. And so in this book, there's a lot of information about growing heels on horses to overcome navicular. Now, he says immediately when he got out of the corrals, he called his friend Leslie Emery because Leslie Emery was interested in what these wild horse feet were like, that they had steep dorsal walls and lots of heel, because this is what Leslie Emery advocated in his book. And so Jamie Jackson says that when he got out, as soon as he got to town, because he didn't have cell phones back then, he called his friend Leslie Emery, and Leslie Emery asked him about the heels, and that Jamie Jackson told him they have no heels. And Leslie Emery said, "What do you mean they have no heels?" And Jackson said, "Just that. They have no heels, flat as a pancake." And so then Leslie Emery asked him, "Well, what about the angle of the dorsal wall?" Because see, heel height, people, heel height in most cases determines the angle of the dorsal wall. If you take the heels down, like, okay, what do we got here? Let's see. Let me turn this around. Okay, this one is kind of hard to read. 56 degrees. That's this foot here. Okay, so now these heels aren't low or short, but they are collapsed forward, right? So let's see what the angle on something like this would be with low heels. Well, there you go. See there? So according to farriery and common sense and structural mechanics and everything else, lower heel makes a lower dorsal wall angle. Higher heel makes a higher dorsal wall angle. And so that is what is advocated in this book. And Leslie Emery had good luck in helping horses overcome navicular by teaching these things in this book. You can even see on the picture here that he's got more heel back here. And so Leslie Emery, so the conversation goes, well, what are the heels like? Well, they have no heels. Well, what do you mean they have no heels? Well, just that. They have no heels, flat as a pancake. And he says, well, so Leslie Emery says, well, what about the dorsal wall angle? And Jamie Jackson says, well, from what I can see, it's steep. So Leslie Emery says, well, how can it be steep and have no heel? And Jamie Jackson goes, I don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out. Well, I'm going to tell you the way he figured it out. He probably never went back and, well, hey, if, okay, he may not have ever gone back to Susanville and actually measured, examined, and photographed all 127 horses like he said he was going to. Instead, he went and got himself a dead horse. He got himself 5 dead horses. I know he got 5 because he said so. And he found one horse with one rear foot that agreed with what he originally told Leslie Emery, which was they have no heels and they have a steep dorsal wall angle. So, how did he figure that out? Well, he just went and got himself this foot here. And that's his research. And so that's what this book, Natural Hoof Care, is totally based on. It is totally based on the rear foot of one dead wild horse. Now he has some pictures of other dead wild horse hooves in there, um, but he does not have one single photo of any of those 107 live horses that he supposedly did, which he changed up 2 years later to say, "Oh, I did 250 horses." And there was no pictures of those feet either. And this became the model for all natural hoof care, a rear foot of one dead wild horse. So, whatever beliefs are mixed with this. See, this is why you would think anything that had more heels than that was setting a coffin bone on its toe. See, there, anyway. So that's Jamie Jackson's research in a nutshell. Um, let's see here. Just a minute. So now here's the deal. Let me find this other thing here. Because Janet Hare, I was telling her all about this, how I found out that in these books, the discrepancy in these books, no pictures, changing up the number from 107 to 250. Okay. Uh, so she writes to him to ask him why the discrepancy. Okay. I was a little like aggravated kind of when she first did that. It's like, hey, I probably should have done that. But you know what? I never would have got around to it, I'm sure. I'm so glad she did it. So here you go. I'll show you what he said. Just a second here. Well, I'll show you some other stuff here too. Do 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 do. Okay. I had it up in my documents, so it's going to take me a second. You'll see his reply. Okay, just a minute. Oh, okay. Okay, so okay, when did she do this? This was like it's been 2 years ago. Okay. So anyway, so Janet writes to him, question from book. And Janet says 1992 97 edition states he did his research on 107 wild horses. Now reading the 2020 edition, he changes it to 250 horses. Can you explain this to me, please? And I mean, he wrote right back to her. And he says this: Hi, Janet. To this day, I don't know where the figure 107 horses came from. I think it was 1,000 plus something hooves, all done on a typewriter. And in that part, I believe. I didn't edit the final text and had no say in it. My photo caption on page 4 is where I put over 200 sets of hooves for the graphic artist who put the book together. So it was actually 250 sets, 2 sets of 125 horses. And that was over 2 visits. Now he's not making any sense. Not in the same year or time of year, because I wanted both winter and after winter samples. And it is even a low number because I did other measurements in Burns, Oregon. Now I got to remind you, no photos. Okay. Okay. And the Palomino Valley and another 50 at Litchfield when I was first trying to figure out what I was looking at and how to measure them. That's when I created the first hoof meter reader because the standard farrier's gauge won't fit on the bottom of a wild horse hooves. That very significantly in width and length across the volar plain. I also had over 30 cadavers processed. See, I told you you had well, for sure, five horses, so 5 times 4, 20, whatever. Uh, 30 cadavers processed, freeze dried, that the BLM procured for me, and other hooves. Here, get this, and other hooves from Area 51 that were proof that illegal and other worldly things are going on out there. Grotesque deformities beyond what one can imagine. Of course, we don't have any pictures of those either. Um, so let's see here. So here's what I did. I called the graphic artist that he says put the big book together that he had no say in. Okay. The guy was on vacation in Timbuktu somewhere, I don't know. And I asked him if he remembered doing the book. He could barely remember it. It was 20 years ago, he said, or 20 some years ago. I said, well, does the author have the final say? And do they, determine what goes in the book? And I'm telling you, the guy treated me like I was a complete moron for even asking. Like he was irritated. I'm bothering him on his vacation. Um, and so he says, absolutely, the author has every say in what goes on in the book. So again, not one photo, not one photo. And so we wrote him again, which I don't have uh that letter here. But anyway, we had Janet write him again. Okay. Um and it came back with even weirder stuff about why he doesn't have any photos. See, no photos at all. He doesn't have any photos because maybe he never went back. Okay, why would he not go back? Well, if you've ever been in a situation where they're roping horses and throwing them down, you might just think, you know what? Why don't I just go get me some dead feet and examine them rather than get into a corral and endanger my life? So, that right there is the research that is behind the natural hoof care movement that they all base their belief on. This one dead wild horse's photo. Okay, So just a minute here. Hold on. I got way too many pictures. Okay, so I'm going to go to my file on him. And I'm going to post two interviews of him on YouTube that you can go and watch where he says wild horses have no heels. Now, the thing that you need to know is that at the time, there were no pictures of any wild horses' feet. But now, even on Facebook, if you get into these different groups that advocate for these wild horses and these wild horse photographers, you can get 1,000 photos easy of horses that have plenty of heel. So, so this is where everybody goes back to is back to him. And so unless you get rid of all his errors, if you still have his errors lodged in your brain, then when you look at these feet and you try to determine what is really going on with them, you're not going to be able to make a sound decision as to what you are looking at and what you are reading. Just a minute here. Okay, so let's look at this. Beware of pictures. Beware, beware. Um, let's see here. Zoom, share. Okay, so this is the model that he came up with. And this is the theory that he came up with. Remember, he told Leslie Emery, when Leslie Emery said, well, how can they have a steep dorsal wall and no heel? And he said, I don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out. Okay, well, the first thing he did was he eventually wound up with one rear foot on a dead mare that wore her heels out that fit his personal ideal. Okay. Secondly, what he did to prove it and figure it out was to manipulate these drawings to make it seem, I mean, this is so manipulating because that graphic artist did not do this. Okay. This is not the work of a graphic artist. This is the work of him. Okay. And what he's doing here is he is trying to come up with a theory that nature alone determines how and why these feet look this way. But what he has done in the drawing is he has manipulated the size of these feet. He's manipulated the size of the feet to agree with his theory on why these horses can have a steep dorsal wall angle and no heel. So we could get into that at some point in great detail and how he finagled the measurements on these feet to come up to what he wanted them to come up to. And so when you're reading this book and you're looking at these drawings, you're going, yeah, okay, I can see it. Right. That's right. And you will agree with it but you have to remember, you're not looking at real horses' feet. You are looking at drawings that he made according to his own personal ideals. Okay, so hold on here. So they got this image in everybody's head that the bulbs had to be on the ground here. See there, that's what you're looking at. Okay. And so this image is put in your head through these drawings this 30-degree hairline angle as well as the one dead wild horse foot. See, I went through these and I drew them out and I measured them all to a T to find out how he manipulated the drawing itself to make it conform to his own personal ideal that he told Leslie Emery on the phone that day. Um, yeah, I went through them a lot. Now, here you got people doing this stuff to get you so you can trim right. Well, trim wrong. Looky there, they got a hairline angle. Now, I don't know who did this, but this is a horse killer. Okay, so they've got 1 1/8 inches, your heel height that they want it to be. And then, not sure what he uses, dorsal angle, heel length, blah, blah, blah. So everybody always trying to come up with some gimmick to get you so you can force your horse's foot into looking just like that one dead wild horse's foot. Okay, so hold on here. Now, here's another thing. Just a minute here. See, just because somebody says they research something doesn't mean that they know how to research or that their research is not biased in favor of a pet theory that they have that they want to prove. Hold on here a second. So in his books, he mentions a number of times how he's not good at taking photos. Okay, yet he claims to have measured, examined, and photographed up to 1,000 feet by the time all was said and done. But that he is not good at taking photographs. But guess what? He took this photograph. See, this is when he was out there supposedly living with wild horses, trying to determine, what their feet was like before he went to BLM. He took this photo. Nothing wrong with that. Why couldn't he take a picture of a horse's foot? Why out of the 1,000 photos don't we have one picture in his book? Why is it that the model became the rear foot of a one dead wild horse? And if you think that's not the case, I'm going to show you something to show you that this is very clear, the image that he has put in the whole barefoot movement's head. Just a second here. Share. Okay, so now I showed you how I had eventually wound up getting a copy of that 1 foot and putting it in the cover of my binder, and how that image of that foot got put in my brain, and I tried to trim my horse's foot into that. Now, this same image and this very same thing has been done to all these people that we're talking about. Okay, so I'm going to read you this. So I found this somewhere on the internet around the same time. So, of course, this was put in my head also. Okay. Uh, Says even though NHC, oh, look at, calls them practitioners. See there? Now, what is a practitioner? You think of medical personnel, right? So you're going to think, oh, well, that person's better than a trimmer or a farrier because they're a practitioner. See, this is what you call marketing strategy. All right. There's money being made off of this. And not that there's anything wrong with that in and of itself, but it does have an effect on research. Okay, so it says even though NHC practitioners agree that each hoof is distinctly different, they agree on one model, which they perceive as being naturally perfect. This is our model. This is the hoof which each horse was born to wear, which is the goal we gradually work towards. And what hoof is that? Well, that's this foot right here. The rear foot of one dead wild horse that died in a roundup that he made his model in his first book. And in the same book he published 3 times, where he changes up the number of hooves that he supposed horses that he supposedly did of 107 in one year to eventually 250 and 1,000 feet that I measured, examined, and photographed. But yet we have this as the ideal model that's been put in everybody's head. So it says the concept of hoof mechanism and blood circulation and a ground parallel coffin bone in natural hoof care essentially functions as the criteria against any kind of horseshoeing and the so-called pasture trim. Okay, as quoted by Marjorie Smith, by farriers. Now, let me tell you something about Marjorie Smith. She invented the hoof guided method that a lot of people follow. She died, okay, but before she died, she saw that this was not the right model. She saw that you should not be trimming the heels out of horses like this, okay? So they got different, they're quoting different people here. And it says, but those principles are in difference to the method of Dr. Strasser, not essential to the practical instructions how to trim a hoof. The one and only criteria for trimming is hoof shape of a wild horse. Okay, look, hoof shape of a wild horse, but what hoof shape of a wild horse? This one here. It says the correct look. Or more, do you see how you get indoctrinated and brainwashed with this crap? Okay, the correct look, or more precisely, the structure of a naturally formed hoof, is the direct result of the wild horse model. What wild horse model? This one. This one. Okay, but why not the front feet of the same horse? Remember the ones with the run forward heels? Why not those? Why does it have to be this one? Because this one is the one that fit what he told Leslie Emery that day on the phone. They have no heels, flat as a pancake. Well, what about the dorsal wall angle? Well, from what I can see, it's steep. Well, how can it be steep when they have no heels? Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out. See, this is where you have a case of somebody making a determination and then going to the ends of the earth to force their idea to be true and finding one foot off of one horse that fit what he thought and making it the model. And then, hey, we print a book. Why would somebody lie to you? Why? No, people wouldn't lie to you. Obvious, got to be the truth, right? How about just being mistaken? Like severely mistaken. Now remember, we're going through him because this is what the whole natural hoof care movement and all these people that do these trims, this is ultimately what they are founded on and what has been put in their head, even though they may not know it. Just like me. Okay. I showed you, let's go back here a second. Yeah. Okay. I showed you my notebook here, right here, where back in 2000, well, I started in 2006, but I started putting this book together in 2007. I got it all in plastic sheets, and I got different kinds of people. Then I got some of Pete Ramey, I got Gene Overnick, I got uh, I don't know who else, other people. Okay, Wild Horse Trim, who is that? Barefoot for Soundness, who is that? The barefoothorse.com, whoever that was. Oh, maybe that was Tribe Equus. I don't know. So got Pete Ramey in here, all that kind of stuff. So eventually I printed this out and I put it in my book here. Let me put it back in. Hold on. Eventually I did that. And so that was put in my head that I had to put on my horse. Okay. And so I tried that from, well, here it says at least 2006 on up to 2014. What's that? 8 years at least. And he did not get, at first he got better and then he got worse. Why is that? Because if their feet are all overgrown and you start taking them down, the trim will work wonders. It can actually make the horse much better. But then you keep going and going and going because the foot does not want to look like that. So it will pull up and it will make false heel. And then you think you got to trim that heel off again and again and again and again. And it keeps making false heel. And then the horse starts getting tender footed and not sound and things like that. Now, here's a fact: some horses can develop a foot like this and seem sound, even be going over the rocks. After all, this horse did it, right? But she also died in a roundup. But what you're not seeing is because this is not the true foot of the horse. This is an adaptive version for survival. What you're not seeing is all the damage going on all the way up. The arthritis, you know, the tendon damage, the knees, everything. Kissing spine, the whole works. So, so like I said, I made this. And then I lost, it was buried in the garage for 5, 6 years. I never looked at it, you know. And then here about a year ago, I'm cleaning some stuff out in the garage and I find it. And I'm shocked. I'm literally shocked to see this picture on the front. Because by this time, I have come to understand that we've been led to follow this deal of one dead wild horse that wore its heels out. But I did not even realize how much that picture had been put in my own head. Okay. Until I found this book again and I seen that picture. And I was really shocked. I mean, I had seen it, but I hadn't seen it. And this is what has happened to all these people. Now, read this deal again. Uh, these are all realizations I came to over a long period of time with a combination of taking pictures, trimming, watching my horse, dissection, helping other people, seeing so many lame horses, um, going back time and time and time and time and time again to check and check and check and recheck and check again. Um, and and like this ground parallel coffin bone thing, I found out that was a lie as well. Um, okay, I can prove that in dissections. Um, that the the coffin bone is not supposed to be ground parallel. The only way you can make it ground parallel is if you trim the heels out and force and crush the internal heel up into the foot. Um, just a minute here. Okay, so we're going to finish reading this. Okay, so uh do. Okay. The one and only criteria for trimming is the hoof shape of a wild horse. Oh, really? Well, you know what? We're going to look at some wild horse hooves, and you're going to see that they have plenty of heel, and that, uh, well, you'll see. It says the correct look, or more precisely, the structure of a naturally formed hoof, is a direct result of the wild horse model. But you got to remember, this one foot is the wild horse model. Natural hoof care practitioners simulate the wear on a wild hoof. Okay, but what are they doing? They're simulating the wearing down the heels to try and get this look. Okay, this is what the natural trim should look like. This is the model. Okay, now the picture I have, that's the way it came on the internet with wild horses. You can't see their feet and the word perfection above it with this picture in the corner. So Okay, so natural hoof care practitioners simulate wear on a wild hoof, which in return stimulates the natural growing patterns of the hoof. Well, no, it distorts and deforms a poor horse's foot. These patterns create the naturally shaped hoof, which is never forced upon the horse. Well, yes, it is. You're mimicking what you think is the wear to try and force the foot into this shape because this is the model. Okay. Da, 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 da. Natural hoof care practitioners simulate the wear on a wild hoof, which in return stimulates natural growing patterns of the hoof. These patterns, see, this is all crap in reality. These patterns create the naturally shaped hoof, which is never forced upon the horse because it is developed in accordance with the individual appearance and disposition. Interview with Jamie Jackson, that guy. Natural hoof care practitioners treat each hoof within the limitations of the individual appearance and simulate the natural abrasion which can be observed in wild horse country. Okay, so you are trying to mold that foot into this shape by trimming the heels out continually, trimming them down, trimming them down, trimming them down, trying to force that hairline down, 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 and then taking the toe back too a lot. Okay, but some people have started not taking the toe back as much, like Lindsay Satchel, which I agree with. Okay, but she's still taking the heels down like this because this is what was put in her mind as an NHC practitioner. See, she's still got these wrong ideas in her head. So it says, so it is that the natural hoof care practitioner's job to find out what keeps the domesticated hoof from becoming a successful hoof like the wild model. Furthermore, it is the goal. And so what did they do? They started blaming diet. Diet became the go-to reason for why all these horses are unsound and taking such a long time to transition. It's not diet, it's how they're trimming. Furthermore, it is the goal to imitate, where am I at here? The abrasion of the rough substrate and thus to produce a high performance barefoot on a domesticated horse. Okay, so if this is your model, this is what you're going to try and form that foot into. But let's look at some wild horse feet that don't look like this. Let's see here. Okay, how about this foot? Here. Now, this is also off a dead wild horse that somebody gave this farrier. Here's Jamie Jackson's foot. Here's what his looks like on the inside. Look, there's hardly no frog. Look at this horse that had lots of heel. Look at the thickness of the frog he has. Look at the thickness of the sole. Look, oh, and there we go. There's that convex sole ridge. See there? Okay, look at the thickness of the frog, the thickness of the frog stay. Okay, now look at Jamie Jackson's one dead wild rear horse, rear foot that wore its heels out. No frog, hairline on the ground, thin soled. And guess what else it's got? It's got a deformed coffin bone. Because this, okay, let me show you here. Okay, gotta find the annotate. Okay, so I'm gonna show you just a second here. Oh, I keep pressing the wrong thing. Just a minute. Okay, annotate. Okay, all right. So once you look at the coffin bone, on this horse. Now let's look at the coffin bone on this horse. Do you see a difference? Anybody still there? Do you see the difference?
Yep.
You're, see, this coffin bone has been remodeled because of how the heels were worn out and all of that internal anatomy was pressed up into the navicular bone, and just the way the frog was, the bottom, I mean, it's deformed. Okay, let me undo that. And I just noticed this here a few months ago because I've been looking at this picture forever, but I got to thinking about um, some of the other damage that happens to the coffin bone when the foot is deformed like this, and how it can wear off the whole tip of the coffin bone. Like in this case, the way this happened, the way the frog was pulled down and pushed up here, it pushed up on the coffin bone. But when you have a horse that develops false heels, what'll happen is, um, let me get this here. What'll happen is instead of instead of this frog pushing up and kind of pushing up this way and deforming the foot that way, what you'll have is all that anatomy in the back will get pushed into this coffin joint right here. From the back, gets pushed in this way. Okay, and that pushes this joint forward like this. Well, when it pushes that joint forward, what happens is it forces the bone down like this. It forces the bone down like this and forces the wall here forward so that they're actually pulling against each other. And so since it forces the toe of the coffin bone, let me do this in a different color. The toe of the coffin bone down onto the sole. See where it fits in this nice little niche here? Okay, it forces it down like this. And so it'll wear off the toe. Okay, let me undo that. Okay, now show you something here. Let's see here. Okay, let's go over here just a second. Where am I at? So this is something you should read. Um, do. So your foundation, see, I believed all this stuff. So I understand what's in people's heads. Um, if when you understand what they teach in farriery, now we haven't even got into Gene Ovenick, okay, and the fact that he had multiple pictures using a hoof gauge on wild horses. Okay, so we have Jamie Jackson saying that a regular telling the wranglers at the Litchfield corrals that a regular farrier's pasture gauge doesn't work, and I have to go invent my hoof meter reader. Okay, and then I'll be back, guys. Which did he go back? Where are the pictures? Right? Okay. But then you have Gene Ovenick doing the same research. They don't know anything about each other. And I got multiple pictures of him using a hoof gauge. He took pictures using a hoof gauge on a wild horse's foot. So, see, a regular farrier's hoof gauge does work on a wild horse's foot. See, there's just all these contradictions in Jackson's claims to the research that he did. Again, where are the pictures? Show us the pictures, like show us the money, right? Show us the pictures. Just a second here. Okay, so share. Okay, so right here you go. A timeline of the barefoot movement. This is an article by Yvonne Wells. Now, I don't know if you know who she is, but her and her husband, okay, they also came up with a hoof trimming. I followed their method as well, because they were in the same group as all these other people. And so, and I'm sure I even have videos on YouTube where I mention them way back when. So she gives a timeline here of the barefoot movement. And right here, what you're going to see here is you're going to see a picture of Jamie Jackson with Hildred Strasser. And so these two, I showed you a second book. They're the second edition of the same book, The Natural Horse, where these two promoted each other for a short period of time. And then she started getting a bad rap as far as her trims, uh, pretty much laming and killing horses over there. And so, and several times people got brought up in charges. And so he totally disassociated himself from her. But basically, they both teach the same similar thing, which is ground parallel coffin bone. Now, here you get a total rundown of how all this started and who's who, the who's who of hoof care. I don't I think Dr. Boker's in here too. See, that's another person we need to talk about. Where did his ideas come from? Okay? So Okay, so there she is with Pete Ramey, Dr. Boker. See, all these people, she's going to tell you in here that all of this is based on Jamie Jackson and Hildred Strasser, on their ideas. Okay, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, if their ideas were correct, who cares? But when you got a guy that claims to have done this research and yet no photos, and then what is it, from 92 to 2020, when he starts getting popular, making money and stuff like that, he's all of a sudden trying to change up how many horses he did from 107 to 250 to make it look more like he really did his research, but not one photo of any of those horses in the original book. How come? And whenever you write to them and ask them about it, they make excuses. See, I'll have to find all the original emails and stuff like that that Janet sent to him and the excuses he made for why there were no pictures. You know, mostly it's, well, I'm just not good at, keeping records, or I'm just not good at taking pictures. Okay, so here's what I think happened. I think he got to the corrals and that it was scary as heck and dangerous. And I seriously question if he ever went back. Why not just go get a couple of dead horses and do it that way? See, and here's the thing, I called Leslie Emery to ask him about this, because here's another thing he did. He told Leslie Emery that same day, after looking at one horse, the ideas in your book are not going to work. Now, why Leslie Emery allowed him to do that is beyond me. Um, See now, right here, first, I want to go back to this though, where it says the founders. The number one thing to keep in mind, that everyone involved in the modern barefoot hoof care movement was influenced either by A, Jamie Jackson, or B, Dr. Hildred Strasser, or both. No modern barefoot system was created without the direct or indirect influence of these two individuals. Everyone that you read about who is influential in the barefoot world or natural hoof care, and let me tell you, you better add equine podiatry to that, because Casey LaPierre is in here too, and he went off and did his own thing and and called it equine podiatry. Him and Rick Redden and Tom Teskey. Okay, it's all the same. It says no direct or indirect influence of these two individuals. Let me make that bigger. Just a second here. Uh, Everyone that you read about who is influential in the barefoot world was either a student of one of these two pioneers or directly influenced by them in some way. Maybe they just read their books or attended a clinic. There was no barefoot movement before these two great horse people. That's why it is important for everyone involved in barefoot to study all of their material. They are the true original thinkers. Now this doesn't mean that there wasn't someone's, oh yeah, she doesn't want to mention Gene Ovenick. I think it's pretty funny. Okay, because Gene Ovenick's research was real. I don't agree with uh uh all of the stuff he came up with either, but his was genuine, with genuine pictures. Okay. He says, now this doesn't mean that there wasn't someone somewhere else during the past 30 years, 30 or more years, having some thoughts about barefooting horses, maybe even doing it successfully. However, any farriers who specialized in barefoot still kept shoeing. Okay. That's because, yeah, Gene Ovanek did invent a shoeing protocol as well. Okay, barefoot was only for certain horses. Certainly, no one else suggested that every horse should go barefoot for health reasons. And if they were talking about it at all, no one was listening. Anyway, this in the next session I do next week, we're going to go through this timeline and show you exactly how everything that we think and do in the natural hoof care movement was influenced by these people, and how their research was faulty. I mean, faulty to a fault. Uh, so I'm going to show you one more thing before we end here today. Let's see here. I mean, I'm just hitting the tip of the iceberg of the bad, faulty research done by these people. Okay, I have proven it. Okay, so the big deal with them was ground parallel coffin bone. Why is that? Because when you trim the heels out, it crushes the internal heel up into the foot, and you wind up with a ground parallel flat coffin bone laying flat is what that means. In reality, the coffin bone sets in the foot at an angle. I'm not saying in, oh God, I hope I can find the picture. Just a minute here. Um, Got to figure out where it's at. Coffin bone. Just a second here. I'll show you because I proved it in dissections. Let's see. See. Okay, hold on. Do, 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 do. Share. Okay, so that was another thing. Besides finding out that they have a convex sole ridge and that the sole is not just concave, okay, found out that the coffin bone is not ground parallel. Ground parallel means, let me to make sure so you know that and understand. Let's see, I'll use yellow. Ground parallel means that it would be like this. The coffin bone would set flat. Now here I want to show you something. See this red line here? What I have done is this is the internal foot of the horse, so it's still got the coriums on it. I got a little kitty here. Here, come over here and say hello. Just a minute. We gotta get some cuteness going on here. Just a second. Just a second here. Here. Say goodbye. Say hello, little kitty. Gotta get some cuteness going. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And you down, okay. Okay, let me go back now. Okay, here we are. Okay, so what they teach, okay. So we got the whole foot of the horse here with the coriums and the skin and the covering over the bone. And so uh there's a thickness covering it. Now remember, the back of the foot is all cartilage and fat. Your heels are cartilage. Okay? This part right here. Now what I did was this here, widow tendon over there, was I cut this part out because I wanted to know about it. Primarily, I wanted to know where the heel started back here, which they called the end of the Palmer process or something like that. And so I cut this piece out, and this is what I noticed. I noticed that even though the foot itself, just a minute here, the foot itself will set flat. Okay, now if the lamina and sole was still in this part of the foot from here to here, okay, then that foot, you could set it on a table and it would set flat, right from the toe to the heel. But you remove the sole and the lamina to expose the coffin bone. All right. And that coffin bone sets in that foot at an angle, like so. So that you see this piece right here. Just a minute. Okay, you see this chunk right here? What you find is that the sole corium under here gets thicker as it moves back towards the heel. So the foot itself, the coffin bone is set within the internal foot at an angle because this corium that is underneath it right here gets thicker from going like this. See, all this in here gets thicker under the coffin bone. So there's always been this big argument about uh, should the coffin bone be at a positive angle, meaning up like this, or should it be ground parallel down like this? Well, the only way to make this coffin bone ground parallel is to crush this heel up into the foot. See, to keep lowering the heel so much so that you would crush this part of the heel up into the foot like that, which on this foot I was in the process of doing because I was trimming this foot barefoot style, trimming the heels down, trimming, having that picture and image in my mind and trying to get this foot to go in that direction. Now, this horse, I trimmed him for about 8 months. He got colic and had to be put down. And then the lady let me have his feet. And so I know I learned so much from this horse, not only because of the dissection. He was one of the first real dissections I did. I mean, I'd gotten feet before that, but I really did more with him. And I I know now because I took plaster casts of his feet as well. And so years later, looking at the plaster casts, I know that I was trimming the heels out of this horse. Um, like here, I'll show you. Anyway, the point is, she's wrong. And how did she determine? See, this is the kind of research these people do. It is so fouled. It just, I like, okay, hey, I only had a GED, right? But I got a lot of common sense and experience. All right. But even I know that probably the best way to determine the angle that this bone is supposed to be is not to just take it out of the the foot, and boil it till it's nothing but bone and throw it on a table and then measure the angles. And that's exactly what she did. Okay? She took his bones out of the foot, nothing else attached to them, throws them on a table, and then says, yeah, see there, they're ground parallel. Okay, and that you need to you got to have a 30-degree hairline like that to get this thing to be ground parallel, and you got to crush the internal heel up into the foot. So between him and her, there was this marriage made in hell for the horse. That's what all of us were following and are following. So Again, so this is a series on what do these people believe? Where do their beliefs come from? Well, I know because the same garbage was put in my own head. See, and it was only over a long period of time I started looking, going, wait a minute. I mean, am I blind here? You know, see, this horse had good heels and had a good foot, and his cartilage was not crushed up into his foot yet, even though I've been trimming his heels out for 8 months. Um, just a minute here. So that coffin bone is at an angle in the foot. Let's see, I'll show you. I got a plaster cast of that foot here. I'll show you. Let's see. Stop share. Okay, right here. That's the same foot. Okay. Now I want you to see how that coffin bone sets at an angle. Can you see it? The coffin bone set, the foot itself is flat, but the coffin bone sets in the foot at an angle. I'm looking for something here. Can you see it? I don't know. So shaky. But anyway, this is the same foot. And I also took this foot and I peeled the corium off here. And you could tell from what I peeled off that it was thinner here and it got thicker as it moved back towards the heel. So, okay. All right. Well, that's all we're going to do for today as far as this is concerned. Um, we'll get into more details of the bad research and the history of hoof care and how it's affected the farriers and the barefoot trimmers. I mean, why look at people, these two people, Jackson and Strasser. Okay, I get a little critical, but the truth of the matter is, hoof care was totally screwed up before they ever got involved. Okay. Uh, if hoof care would have had the answers, these two would not have been looking for answers. And so then when you start getting into the beliefs that came out of the vet schools that affected these two people, Strasser and Jackson. See, now, yeah, I get a little critical, of their research because it's a little irritating, to think that I followed that. And here he hasn't even got one photo of the supposed feat that he claimed he did. Instead, I'm following this thing here, you know. Um, and my horses suffered because of it. And I suffered because of it. And I'm still suffering over it. So uh, it's important because a lot of people are suffering. A lot of horses are suffering. And the thing about it is that pretty much everybody really thinks they're doing the right thing, but we have been misled. And I don't think they misled on purpose. Like, I don't think that Jackson purposely picked that foot knowing that he's going to cripple all these horses. Okay. I think he just one of them guys. He had a theory and he wanted his theory to be right. And he didn't know what he was doing in research. And there you have it. You find people do this all the time. They come up with an idea and they're never going to admit they're wrong no matter what. I think ultimately that's why paddock paradise and track systems were developed because they knew that trim wasn't working. Okay. So they couldn't admit the trim wasn't working. So they were going, well, we need more movement. We need a more natural setting. If we can just get these horses to move more, the trim will work. And so I think that's where a lot of that came from because the trim does not work. Um, can a horse survive on it? Yeah, that one dead wild mare survived for quite a while, you know. Um, And of course, when then you got the whole natural hoof care movement blaming everything on what your horse eats. We're not getting enough herbs. Nobody realizes that this is why their horse is unsound. Okay, so that's all I'm doing today. Um, does anybody have anything they want to add?
I just want to say thank you, Linda, for compiling all this information and being so thorough about it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes,
You're
I
thank
welcome.
mean,
you.
it's just amazing that you're probably the only person on this planet that shares this history like you do.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you too, Linda. This has been a really great session. I look forward to the next couple series. And it's just great to learn the history of it because, if you're in a situation where you're trying to teach something to somebody, it's great to be able to kind of know the history of how we ended up where we are.
Well, yeah,
So,
because otherwise, how can we get out of it? Who would know?
yeah,
Who would think? You know,
yeah.
and I'm learning more all the time and trying to put it. Oh, come here, little cat. That's little Dickens. Anyway, well, thank you for that feedback. It's not easy to share this stuff. You know,
Yeah, yeah, and the fact that you just do it because, you're passionate about it, all these other people are trying to push what's damaging our horses and getting paid for it and, making all this money. And so it's just awesome that you take the time and that you care and that you do this to help us get out of it. So, yeah.
well, thank you, and I hope it helps everybody and explains, kind of helps free up people's heads and gets them looking in another direction. Now, and we didn't get to go into uh, wild horses' feet, the abundance. Now, I'm going to show you something pretty funny on some of these people's channels, how they advocate for this same model with no heels, and yet some of them actually have pictures of wild horses running while they're advocating for no heel. And I've got pictures of the horses, and all the horses have plenty of heel, and they're not seeing it. You
Yeah.
know, it's just like ridiculous. And I'm not criticizing them because I was the same way.
Yeah.
Now I do criticize Jamie Jackson. You know, I'm I do criticize him because uh he just should have. Where's your pictures, Jamie?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
As
know,
as you've taught and we've learned about the history, it does kind of seem like he really just wanted to be right so bad that he just kind of made up his own, and just kind of forced it.
yeah. Now
As you
here's
go into that, it's like, wow.
yeah, and I've talked about how he had this relationship with Leslie Emery, and I've talked to Leslie Emery several times. And the last time I talked to him, because I want to ask him again. Now, I want to make sure. Did you see any of the photos that Jamie Jackson took? And well, I know that that he got some horses some dead feet. Okay. It makes me wonder, did he know the whole time that Jackson never went back? You know?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think he went back. If he did, well, let him prove it. Just because
Yeah.
he says so, don't mean it's so. You know, prove it. I want to know you went back. I want to see your pictures. Uh, where are they? I don't care if they're bad. I'll take bad pictures, right? But when you tell me that you took, measured, examined, and photographed 1,000 feet, do you see how that would influence people?
Yeah.
Oh man, well, and they all look just like this one. Okay,
But you think there would be a book of them?
sure, why not?
Yeah.
I've got more pictures of Gene Obenek's research from off his videos on YouTube than anything of Jackson's. And
Yeah.
like I said, he's got pictures with um, that hoof gauge. See, it's just a big baloney story,
Yeah.
you know, because I've been around horses have been tied up like that. I've seen horses tied up, jerked down, and gilded right there. You know, when I was a kid in Wyoming. It's a violent, it's worse than like roping calves or, you know, roping cattle and stuff like that. You know, when you rope a horse and, you know, head them and heel them, it's a whole different deal, you know, especially if you love horses. I mean, it's just like, you know, I could see uh, why he might not have been real keen on that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, if you want to get sick, just go look, see, because Mexicans do that. They got horse ropings all the time. It's disgusting. You know, they got
Yeah.
some on YouTube. Yeah, it's a sport.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
almost like Leslie Emery was, found something was being successful and he just kind of had to come in and change it to
yeah,
steal it from him, and
it
take the
really
glory.
was like that. You know, but then Leslie Emery decided to go into some psychobabble mythological stuff and said, told Jackson, you do it. I'm going to college.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Mm.
Because his book was excellent. And he's right in that book, you know,
Yeah.
that horses should have heels. Um, so we almost got out of the error of horses not having heels just to get lured back in by the so-called barefoot movement. But anyway, okay, well, I'm going to go and we will continue this next week.
Okay, well, real quick, I posted something on this site earlier. Somebody had
Oh,
sent me, you don't have to pull it up today. Just everybody go look at it later on your own time.
okay.
It's pretty cool. I had a friend send it to me and I was like, whoa. So I shared it with the group of a horse that had its coffin bone break off, but grow out with the hoof. And you can see the separation in the x-rays. Pretty crazy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, it's there. Go ahead and look at it.
Okay, well, remind me next week and we will look at it first thing.
Okay, cool.
Okay?
All
And
right.
talk
Bye.
about it.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, take care. We'll talk at you later. Bye bye.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Linda.
Linda. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Hi,
everybody.
everyone.